You're standing in polar bear country, Greenland. Out in the middle of the ocean lies a landmass 3 times the size of France, home to just 50,000 people. A place with no roads linking towns, where dog sleds and helicopters are the only legs that can carry you forward. Greenland doesn't feel like anywhere you've ever been. It feels like another planet, hiding in plain sight on Earth. So let's step beyond the edge of the map and into a world where nature is still the undisputed ruler. Often called the Northern Hemisphere's frozen heart, the Greenland ice sheet is a colossal ice kingdom that influences the planet's climate rhythm. Spreading across nearly 1.7 million square kilometers, it isn't just a barren wasteland, it's a living force that helps regulate Earth's balance. It stretches out like an endless white desert, broken by strange, haunting cracks. Deep turquoise crevasses slice into ancient ice like jagged veins, exposing hidden depths across the plateau. Above it all, polar winds never stop, shaping snow into frozen waves and carrying a soundtrack of isolation that has echoed for thousands of years. This is where carving begins, where ice breaks away with a thunder-like roar and becomes giant icebergs. These frozen giants help build a vital ocean ecosystem. As they drift and melt, they release mineral-rich nutrients into the sea, feeding a chain of life that starts with microscopic plankton and reaches all the way up to whales. But this frozen heart is beating with growing fragility. As global temperatures rise, faster melting adds to sea level rise, threatening coastal communities worldwide. To witness the Greenland ice sheet is to look at something majestic and vulnerable at the same time, a reminder that distant shorelines are tied to the survival of this towering fortress of ice. Nuuk doesn't look like a capital the way most people imagine one. There are no highways funneling traffic into the city, no skyline reaching for the clouds. What you notice first is how small it feels against the landscape. Mountains stand quietly behind it. The sea presses in from almost every direction. This is where Greenland is governed, yet nature never steps aside. Modern concrete buildings sit close to wooden houses painted red, blue, and yellow colors, chosen first for practicality. In winter, when snow wipes away, edges and distances, color tells people where they are and where safety begins. Even now, those colors remain, a reminder that the city grew out of necessity, not ambition. You might pass a government office on one street, then see fishing boats unloading on the next. Snowmobiles and cars share the same narrow roads. On clear days, humpback whales surface just offshore, close enough to spot from land, as if the city itself were only a temporary guest. Nearly a third of Greenland's population lives here, yet it never feels crowded. People sense the weather before they check the forecast. Plans revolve around wind, ice, and light. In winter, darkness stretches long, and the city glows under street lamps and kitchen windows. In summer, the sun refuses to set, and time starts to feel different. The National Museum of Greenland doesn't impress you with size or spectacle. Its power is quieter. Its most famous artifacts, the Chilakitsok mummies, were preserved naturally, 3 women and a child laid side by side, sealed by cold. They offer an intimate window into the island's story, reaching back thousands of years. Their faces aren't frozen in drama, they're calm. Fur clothing still holds its shape, stitching still visible. Every detail suggests preparation for people who weren't expecting rescue or recognition, only the cold, the darkness, and whatever came next. 5 centuries later, the Arctic kept its promise. Skin, hair, tools, even the expression on a face remains, a silent record of life in an early Inuit world. Outside, Nook keeps moving phones, traffic, schedules. Inside, a different rhythm holds, tradition, survival, and identity preserved in stillness. Kangerlussuaq feels like a place made for passing through a natural threshold. It serves as Greenland's main gateway thanks to the region's largest international airport. Once a US military base during the Cold War, it was built for strategy, and that legacy still shows. Most travelers move through quickly, not realizing it's one of the few places where you can reach the Greenland ice sheet by road. Set deep inland at the end of a 170-kilometer fjord, Kangerlussuaq has a more stable, continental climate than the coast, with clear skies that often make it a prime spot for northern lights. The surrounding area is also musk ox territory. Kangerlussuaq doesn't invite exploration with charm. It simply makes exploration possible, then steps aside, like a final reminder that Greenland's interior isn't scenery. It's a silent presence, completely uninterested in being conquered. The road ends quietly at point 660. No welcome sign, no barrier between land and ice. One moment, you're on gravel and rock. Then everything turns white, stretching to the horizon. The ice beneath your feet is older than any settlement on the island. Some layers formed hundreds of thousands of years ago, long before names, borders, or memory. Press a hand against it, and the cold hits instantly, sharp, almost corrective, reminding you how briefly you belong here. Nearby, scientists drill ice cores, pulling out frozen records of ancient climate, dust, trapped air bubbles, traces of past atmospheres locked inside. Each layer is a chapter, stacked patiently through time. Russell Glacier makes its presence known before you fully see it. A distant crack carries through the air, then silence. Then it happens again. Ahead, a massive wall of ice rises nearly 60 meters high, scarred with fractures and streaked in blues and grays, shaped by pressure and time. The glacier feels alive in an unsettling way. Ice shifts constantly. Chunks break without warning, collapsing into meltwater below. Every impact sends ripples across the surface, a reminder that nothing here is still. On the tundra near the route to Russell Glacier, reindeer appear often, moving in small groups, heads down, searching for moss and low grass. They don't rush. Every step seems designed to save energy, as if they know Greenland's summer never lasts long. More elusive are Arctic foxes. They appear suddenly, then vanish just as fast. In summer, their fur blends into rock and dry ground in gray-brown tones. When winter arrives, it turns pure white, an almost perfect disguise against snow and ice. Wildlife here doesn't stand out as a highlight. It belongs to the landscape, moving alongside the ice, adapting with the seasons, living in a world where silence usually wins. As Greenland's second-largest city, Sisimiut has learned how to grow without losing itself. Modern apartments and workshops stand beside older wooden houses, not as contrast, but as continuity. For a long time, Sisimiut has been a hub of movement and skill. Fishing remains central not as a symbol, but as daily work that still feeds families and shapes routines. Snowmobiles line up beside boats at the harbor, depending on the season. What changes with the weather isn't the rhythm of life, it's the tools used to sustain it. Unlike many settlements, Sisimiut is connected by road, one of the few places where routes truly extend outward. Sisimiut doesn't present itself as a crossroads between past and future. It moves forward while carrying its history with ease, proving that modern life in Greenland doesn't require abandoning the values that made survival possible in the first place. Ilulissat lives on the edge of constant motion. Icebergs drift past its coastline day and night, some taller than buildings, others polished smooth by time and water. Houses cluster along the shore, painted in muted colors that stand out against snow and ice. There are no roads connecting Ilulissat to other towns. Travel happens by boat, by air, or not at all. Daily routines bend around light and weather. In summer, the sun barely sets, stretching time until sleep feels optional. In winter, darkness closes in, and windows glow softly against the cold. People move carefully, conserving energy, respecting the conditions. Tourists come to photograph the ice fjord nearby, often stunned by its scale. Locals pass with grocery bags, children trailing behind, unmoved by what others call extraordinary. Fishing remains central. Work continues. Life goes on. Ilulissat is Greenland's most visited town, yet it never performs. It lets you observe, but it doesn't reshape itself. Here, ice defines the horizon, silence fills the gaps between sounds, and the absence of roads feels less like a limitation and more like a decision no one ever questioned. On Greenland's west coast, Samek-Kujalek, also known as Jakobshavn Glacier, is not just a geographic feature. It's one of the most powerful moving forces on the island. It's widely recognized as one of the fastest-flowing glaciers in the world, advancing toward the sea at an average of around 40 meters per day. That constant movement pushes enormous volumes of ice, making it one of the main sources of icebergs in the Northern Hemisphere. In fact, it produces a significant share of Greenland's iceberg output. Calving here happens with frightening scale. Massive slabs break away from the glacier's front, sometimes as tall as high-rise buildings. When they crash into the water, the impact can be strong enough to register on seismographs far away. The area is part of a UNESCO World Heritage Site, not only for its visual beauty, but for its importance in climate research. Scientists track Kujalleq to understand polar melt and its direct impact on global sea levels. Icebergs born here carry compressed air bubbles from thousands of years ago, tiny time capsules preserving traces of ancient atmospheres. Disco Bay is a vast stretch of water south of the Nuussuaq Peninsula, acting like a staging ground and often a graveyard for giant icebergs born from Kujalleq. Because parts of the bay are relatively shallow, these frozen giants can get stuck, forming a silent maze of ice. The shapes vary wildly: fortress-like blocks, jagged spires, strange domes carved by wind and water. Ice shifts from bright white in sunlight to deep blue where it's compressed dense over time. When summer arrives, Disco Bay becomes alive. Humpback whales migrate in from warmer southern waters, drawn by abundant food krill and small fish carried by currents. They breach and slap their tails between the ice, creating a vivid contrast. Living power moving through a world of silent, drifting ice. For local Inuit communities, Disco Bay is more than scenery. It's a vital fishing ground and a place where stories of human adaptation have been passed down for generations. Rising from the deep blue water of the fjord, Uummannaq Mountain stands like a giant heart, two sharp peaks, forming a shape so distinct it becomes both landmark and symbol. In Greenlandic, Uummannaq literally means heart-shaped, and the mountain feels like the anchor of the entire region. Below it, a vivid village of colorful wooden houses clings to rugged ground. Life here is a lesson in resilience, shaped by long traditions of hunting and fishing. Small boats thread through icy water. Sled dogs fill winter with noise and movement. These dogs aren't just transportation, they're the pulse of the season, essential companions for crossing frozen terrain where machines can fail. Above Uummannaq, the sky delivers some of the Arctic's most dramatic displays. In summer, the midnight sun paints the island gold for 24 hours, turning icebergs into glittering shards. In midwinter, the northern lights flare overhead. Green and violet ribbons dancing above the heart-shaped peak, casting an unreal glow across frozen water. Uummannaq is where Arctic harshness meets human warmth, an icebound sanctuary where nature's heart feels unmistakably alive. About 80 kilometers north of Ilulissat, Eki Glacier is one of Greenland's most striking places to witness carving up close at a distance that still feels uncomfortably real. Nicknamed the Carving Glacier, Ichi's ice front stretches roughly 5 kilometers, with walls often towering 100 to 200 meters high. The glacier breaks often. Every few minutes, sharp cracks like cannon fire echo from deep within the ice, warning that another collapse is coming. When tons of ice slam into the fjord, it can produce small tsunami waves that roll outward, strong enough to rock boats waiting at a safe distance. The glacier's surface is webbed with open crevasses, some so deep they swallow light. Each collapse reveals fresh ice torn from the mass behind it. What falls today may have been forming for thousands of years, compressed slowly under snowfall no one remembers. The oxygen-rich waters in front of Iki attract seabirds, and if you're lucky, you might spot seals resting on floating ice calm, almost like visitors enjoying the few comforts this place allows. Qaqortoq, the largest town in southern Greenland, appears like a carefully arranged scene of bright wooden houses stacked along steep rock above the harbor. But the town's true spirit isn't in its buildings. It's carved into the island's ancient foundation through a unique project called Stone and Man. Launched in the early 1990s by local artist Aka Herk, the project turned Qaqortoq into a permanent outdoor sculpture museum. Instead of placing statues into space, more than 18 artists from across the Nordic world carved directly into granite boulders and natural rock faces scattered throughout town. Walking Qaqortoq becomes a quiet treasure hunt. Around 40 carvings blend into daily life. A thoughtful Inuit face emerging from rough stone, whales flowing across a rock near the post office, Arctic symbols etched into ground where children run and play. Granite here is hard and unforgiving, forcing artists to work patiently to bring softness out of the roughest material. Art in Qaqortoq doesn't sit apart from nature. It rises from the earth, weathers salt wind and snow, and reflects a deep bond between human imagination and the geology beneath it. In a green valley overlooking a fjord, the Valsøy Church ruins are Greenland's best-preserved medieval Norse site. Built around the 14th century by Viking settlers from Iceland, the church has long lost its roof and interior, yet its thick granite walls, about 1.5 meters wide, still stand after more than 600 years of Arctic weather. The construction is remarkable. Massive stones fitted tightly together with little or no mortar, creating a structure that has endured far beyond its builders. Arched windows and the main entrance still frame views of blue water, hinting at a time when Catholic Europe and northern exploration reached even here. Wolsey is tied to one of history's great mysteries, the disappearance of the Norse Greenlanders. The last known recorded event here was a wedding on September 14th, 1408, held inside this very church. After that, written traces fade. By the mid-15th century, the Norse settlements of southern Greenland were empty. Theories remain: a cooling climate during the Little Ice Age, collapsing trade routes, depleted resources, overgrazing, growing isolation. The stones don't confirm any one answer. They simply remain standing evidence of a community that vanished. Not far from Viking ruins, Igaliku feels like a beautiful contradiction. This is one of Greenland's most picturesque settlements, tucked at the end of a fjord, where the soil is surprisingly fertile. Igaliku sits on the site of Gardar, once a Norse bishopric and a religious and political center. The modern story began in 1782, when Anders Olsen, a Norwegian trader, and his Inuit wife, Tuperna, chose to settle here and raise cattle. They reused red sandstone from the ruins of Gardar to build early homes, creating a warm, earthy architecture that still stands out against snow-covered mountains. Today, Igaliku is a small farming village, home to only a few dozen people centered on sheep. Along the King's Road leading into town, green fields stretch outward and white sheep graze between red stone outcrops, a scene that can look more like rural Scotland than an Arctic island. Life moves slowly here, guided by seasons and soil. Igaliku shows how human communities can renew themselves. On the remains of a lost Viking world, another community grew, learning to live with the land as shared ground, keeping a pocket of green alive in one of the harshest places on Earth. Narsak in southern Greenland is often described as an open-air geology museum because of the rare minerals found here, some difficult to find anywhere else on Earth. The town sits on relatively flat, fertile ground, true to the meaning of Narsak in the local language. What makes it exceptional lies beneath the surface. Rich deposits of gemstones and minerals, including rubies and the rare stone tugtapite. Famous for its shifting color and its red glow under ultraviolet light. This geology began billions of years ago through complex processes that created magma intrusions packed with hundreds of mineral types. Narsak draws scientists and mineral seekers alike, but it's also an important farming area. The climate is relatively mild, and mineral-rich soil supports sheep and cattle farms, creating a striking contrast between green pastureland and blue icebergs drifting offshore. With colorful wooden houses along the fjord, Narsak feels like a place where value isn't only on the surface. Much of its wealth lies deep inside ancient rock, quiet, permanent, and waiting. Tasemiut Fjord stretches for about 70 kilometers in far southern Greenland and is often called Patagonia of the North by climbers and explorers. Its signature is vertical granite, massive rock towers rising straight from the water to heights over 1,000 meters. Peaks like Ketil, Ulamatosuak and Naluma Sortok cut a sharp skyline and push human limits. The granite is dense and hard, polished over millions of years by Ice Age glaciers, leaving smooth vertical faces that free climbers dream about. Tasemiut is intensely quiet. The silence is broken only by meltwater waterfalls, spilling from high cliffs, or the sudden splash of salmon in clear water. It feels like a separate world, ruled by stone and weather. On a small, isolated island among the fjords of southern Greenland, Unatok offers one of the Arctic's most surreal human experiences. It's one of the only places in Greenland with natural hot pools warm enough for bathing year-round, holding steady around 37 to 38 degrees, even when air temperatures drop below freezing. Unlike Iceland's hot springs, Unatok's warmth isn't from active volcanic eruptions, but from groundwater heated under pressure deep underground before rising back to the surface. People have used these pools for centuries, long before modern tourism reached this coast. For Inuit communities, it was a rare place to rest and recover, a pocket of warmth in a cold world. Even today, it remains a quiet stop where people can soak in natural heat while watching ice drift through the fjord, finding balance between Earth's warmth and the Arctic's cold. Tasiilaq, the largest town in eastern Greenland, sits in one of the most dramatic settings on Earth. The town lies on Amasalik Island, deep inside a fjord ringed by steep, jagged peaks that rise like spearheads into the sky. Unlike the gentler valleys of the south, the mountains around Tasiilaq form a natural bowl that helps shield the town from the harshest ocean winds. Bright wooden houses climb the rocky slopes, creating a striking contrast against cold, grey stone. Life here moves on a different rhythm. With around 2,000 residents, Tasiilaq is the cultural and administrative heart of eastern Greenland, with language and customs shaped by long isolation. Before European explorers arrived in the late 1800s, the Ammassalik people lived largely cut off for centuries. Winter here is long and severe, turning the fjord into solid ice, where dog sleds still matter for connecting nearby settlements. In summer, snow retreats and wildflowers bloom at the edges of town, brief, intense life wedged between granite towers. Semillik means the place of glaciers, and the name fits. This massive fjord system, roughly 80 to 90 kilometers long, holds some of the densest and most spectacular iceberg traffic on Greenland's east coast. It acts like a pipeline from the interior ice toward the sea, fed in part by Helheim Glacier, one of Greenland's largest and most active. Helheim releases enormous icebergs the size of small islands, or multi-story buildings drifting outward toward the Atlantic. The scene is defined by scale and authority. The fjord's surface can be filled with dense fragments of ice and towering bergs, glowing deep blue ice compressed over thousands of years. Wildlife follows the ice. Seals resting on floating platforms, gulls circling overhead, alert to movement below. For scientists, Semillik is a living field site for studying how warming oceans influence glacier melt. For anyone who reaches it by boat or helicopter, it feels like a white avenue where geologic time and moving water collide, strange, silent, and immense. Perched near the entrance to Scoresby-Sund, Itakortormit is one of the most remote and isolated settlements on the map. It sits on Greenland's east coast, separated from Iceland by a wide stretch of sea, and for most of the year, the coast is nearly inaccessible by ship because of dense sea ice. With roughly 350 residents, Itakortormit feels like a small island of life amid grey tundra and massive icebound mountains. The only way in is by helicopter from Nørlerit Inart Airport or by boat during a brief summer window when the sea opens. What defines Itakortormit is its people. This is still home to Inuit hunters, Piniartut, who maintain a way of life practiced for millennia. While many Greenlandic towns have shifted towards services and tourism, residents here still rely heavily on hunting seals, narwhals, and under strict quotas polar bears for food and materials. Hunting isn't recreation here, it's survival, carried out with deep respect for nature's rules and legal limits. Dog sleds remain essential work tools, and the sound of barking teams carries through town more than engines ever do. Bright red, orange, and blue houses stand out against the snow, small signals of warmth in an unforgiving world. Itakortormit is where the line between modern life and ancient survival grows thin, the kind of place that proves human existence itself can be a hard-won victory. Scoresby Sund on Greenland's east coast is the largest and deepest fjord system on the planet. Its branching structure reaches more than 350 kilometers inland, like the roots of an enormous tree, a true maze of vertical cliffs and ice-filled water. At its deepest, it drops to around 1,150 meters below sea level, holding an immense volume of water and drifting ice. The geology is a show of Earth's long history. Dark basalt cliffs to the south, layered sedimentary mountains with vivid bands of color to the north. Black rock, white snow, and deep blue water combine into a landscape that feels severe and perfectly still. Scoresby Sund collects countless icebergs of every size and shape, released from glaciers draining the interior ice. Many become trapped in narrow channels or drift slowly with currents, turning the fjord into a shifting desert of ice that changes from day to day. Along the thin strips of tundra near the coast, Arctic life persists. Muskox, reindeer, seabirds adapted to short summers and long cold. The silence is often broken by the echo of ice collapsing from cliffs or winds screaming through deep valleys. For explorers, Scoresby Sund represents the extreme edge of Earth's scale, space and distance pushed beyond modern expectations. Qaanaaq, also known as Thule, lies in northwest Greenland, among the northernmost inhabited places on Earth. Above 77 degrees north, it lives through nature's extremes, months of polar night, then a summer of midnight sun. Qaanaaq feels like a human outpost set against barren tundra and a frozen ocean. Its modern settlement history includes upheaval. Inuit families were relocated in 1953 to make room for a military base, shaping a close-knit community with deep Arctic identity. Here, Greenland sled dogs aren't just working animals. They are the only legs capable of carrying hunters across frozen fjords to reach food. This ancient breed is tough, enduring, built to handle brutal cold. Each dog knows its place in the team. Hierarchy keeps order. Endurance keeps everyone alive. The bond between hunters and dogs grows from daily care and shared risk. In this cold, machines fail. Dogs keep moving. Greenland also protects the breed. In parts of the north and east, other dog breeds are restricted to preserve the sled dog's purity and survival instincts. The sound of paws pounding snow and runners sliding over ice becomes the signature sound of Quanach. Covering Greenland's entire northeast, Northeast Greenland National Park is the largest national park in the world, about 972,000 square kilometers, larger than many countries. It is almost completely wild, with no permanent civilian population, only a small number of scientists and the Danish Sirius Patrol. The park spans an ice sheet, mountains, vast tundra valleys, and a coast of tangled fjords. This is where human control ends, and nature's rules take over. It is prime polar bear territory, the Arctic's top predator hunting seals across pack ice with minimal human disturbance. Arctic foxes are here too, among the toughest small animals on Earth, changing coat color with the seasons to disappear into snow or rock. Winter can drop below 50 kaki, and storms can be violent. Yet that harshness has protected one of the last truly untouched regions on the planet. This park isn't just a reserve, it's a time capsule holding an Ice Age world in place where silence and scale create a kind of authority that reminds us there are still places on Earth where humans will always be visitors. Across ice thousands of years old, towering granite walls, and resilient communities, we've witnessed a world where geologic time and human life overlap, where isolation isn't a barrier, but a protective shell preserving some of the purest parts of Earth. Greenland remains a realm of magnificent quiet, a rare treasure we can only keep if we understand it well enough to protect it. Thank you for traveling with us through this maze of rock and ice. Keep that sense of wonder alive, and I'll see you in the next journey, toward the next land waiting to be explored.